Okay, I have Gavin Hesketh with me, CEO and founder of Hindsight Rated. Thanks, Gavin, for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Spencer.
Could you start off by giving a little bit of a background about yourself?
Yeah, I'm from England originally, the northwest, in a place called Bolton. I been working for myself for quite a long time. Sold my first car when I was 7, and I've been trying to do it for myself ever since. You know, I almost got expelled from school for putting what they call the tuck shop out of business because I was selling chocolate to the kids at cheaper rates. Yeah, I've been working for myself ever since.
I see. Started pretty early.
Yes. Yeah. I honestly don't know a week that I've done less than 80 hours for the past 30 years.
It's impressive. So I guess started a long time ago. How did like entrepreneurship kind of become an interest, or what drove you to be like an entrepreneur?
Well, I think it came out of a need to. For me personally, it came out of a need. Most of my family sort of, let's say, worked for themselves, you know, and so I saw the things that they did. You would describe me as the white sheep of the family, with the way that I do things. I've always been above board and straightforward, and there's a show in England, it ran for about 30 years, called Only Fools and Horses. And unless you've really watched it, you won't really understand this, but my family are like these people on this show, you know, and I always wanted to, I saw the practice of doing things properly as more sustainable, you know. Mm-hmm. It's just I don't attain to the fake it until you make it way of doing things. I believe in the confidence that actually knowing what you're doing brings, you know. So yeah, I mean, my entrepreneurial side comes from, I guess, a mixture of family and also the need to be able to look after myself.
Okay, so you had that inspiration pretty early on, kind of grew up in it.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's cool. You never had any thoughts of anything else other than working for yourself?
Well, I mean, I have been a civil engineer. I've built runways and bridges and whatnot, and I've worked for a quite a large company, but I did that for a short amount of time. Okay. The thing is, when you work for somebody else, I find that no matter you're very restricted. Mm-hmm. You know, again, I get bored unless I'm doing something. Unless I'm, you know, absolutely jam-packed, my day's full, I don't know what to do with myself. So, mm-hmm. You know, even when I was civil engineering, I'd be in there 7 days a week when most people are only there 5. Yeah. You know, and so because I like to be ahead of the game. I like to be what working for yourself does for me is enables me to see into the future, to plan a year, 6 months, right. 5 years, 10 years ahead. Mm-hmm. I don't have a specific goal, only direction.
Right. Okay. So there's always something you could be working forward to, even if you finish next week's stuff. There's the following weeks or the years, like you were saying.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's for me, there's no such thing as next week's thing. You know, we have you have stages. Mm-hmm. You have things that you must do before you can, you know, before you have the ability to do other things. Okay. But you know, obviously you could have a break. You got to have time, mental space. You could have time for yourself. But working for yourself, as you know, as you'll know, people who are watching this will know, you're always at work. You're always planning. You're always thinking. You know, mm-hmm. Some of the best decisions I've made have come from lying on the sofa and closing my eyes. Something that I've thought about for weeks, whilst being busy and slammed, have only really been made crystal clear when I've sat back or when I've been asleep. So you're always at work, no matter what you're doing. And now I guess that's both a wonderful place to be, and I guess murky water, because that's where you forget to give yourself real time off.
Right.
But anyway, I think for me, there's nothing else that I want to do, really. Not at this point. I think, like I say, so if you add everything up, all my time, I'm in my early 40s, and so it's been 35 years of self-employment so far.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So kind of control your own destiny and that type of stuff.
Yeah. You can put more. You can put more into what you're doing freely than into somebody else's, and it's not because there's that you're not willing to put into somebody else. It's that often you feel like you're stepping on toes. That you are making decisions that maybe they don't want, or whatever. So when it's for yourself, you're more able to make mistakes. You're more able to run with something. To see how it feels, how it looks, how it tastes. Rather than take that chance with somebody else. Right.
That makes a lot of sense. You have more freedom, even though you're working more, but it's not like work. It probably a lot of times is just what you're. Almost like a hobby, but I don't want to say it's a hobby because you're still working. But
it's a purpose, is what it is.
Okay.
For me, it's I don't feel like I'm. I mean, obviously, you get mentally exhausted. You might get frustrated every so often, and sometimes even more than that. But honestly, as I say, it's a purpose. It's leading me to the options that I want further down.
Cool. So, are there any sacrifices that you've had to make?
Yeah, every day, all the time. You've got to say no to yourself constantly, because there's a business side of you, right? Where you wear that mask, and then there's a normal side of you. I find that you have to restrict this part, this movement over here. You stand outside of the external influences and internal influences. So when whether it's friends or your own wants and needs, you've got to put them to the side. And I mean, I'm very restrictive with myself, but I'm a bit of a, for want of a better word, internally a bit of a mad bastard. I could run rampant constantly. It's where I come from. It's like it's within my genetic makeup to be a bit of a nutcase. But I've always restricted that because there's a certain. I grew up with my grandparents, so decorum, or a way of navigating through respectful society, and the way that you're seen for what you do is very important, because it's So, and it's the same with business, and if you give way to your inner being, your normal self, sometimes that isn't received in the best way. So you have to be restrictive. So you don't go to parties. I mean, I had an electrical contracting business in Florida for a while, and I didn't go out because we had such a large catchment area for work. I never went out where I worked or where we worked. So pretty much the north end of Florida, I didn't go out. So for a while I was in Florida, I learned to cook really well, and so there's constant sacrifices. There's constant, you certainly when you're starting a business, you don't go on holiday. You restrict everything. Everything's about what you're putting into the business, because you have to let it grow. Mm-hmm. So, and that's not just about financially. That's about, again, mindset. And and also the part of the sacrifice of running a business is not just you. It's the layers. So your friends, your family, your pets, they all sacrifice a little bit. In the knowledge that it's for your well-being. And so, yeah. I mean, there's a hell of a lot of sacrifice, and it's real, and it's every day. Mm-hmm. So, but again, when this becomes a purpose, when it becomes second nature, then you accept those sacrifices. And what it does is it brings up a lot of advantages which you would never see. Like just yesterday, for instance, I spoke to a lady in Athens, in Greece. Mm-hmm. And, if I wasn't doing this, I would never have had that conversation. I'm speaking to her again next week. And it's a beautiful connection that we were able to make, just through what I do with hindsight. So, mm-hmm. There are things that you have to give up, sacrifice, but also there are some wonderful things that you gain from it.
You ever struggle with them, or
yeah.
Does it ever become harder on some days, or you kind of reach the point where it's you've got it down?
No, it's always a question. The thing is, you always need to let go a little bit. I used to, before I moved to America, I would go out probably once every 3 months, and I'd be out for like maybe 2 or 3 days with friends. Mm-hmm. And I'd go and see them in London, or I'd go to Manchester or whatever. Or we go to Europe. And so we'd let loose, and I could open myself, because I could talk to my friends because they knew me from being a kid. Uh-huh. So I could talk to them about whatever. Whereas, it is a struggle, because like when you meet new people, often it is through work, and you can't let yourself out. Well, I mean, because the thing is, I'm quite, especially being an English person in America, my approach to conversation is not confrontational. Well, it is confrontational, but it's more direct, and it's more honest. And we have a saying where I'm from: you don't go around the houses, you go straight to it. You know mm-hmm. what I mean? It's about finding detail. It's about asking questions. It's about finding the fabric of the person you're dealing with, you're speaking to. Okay. Because where I'm from, we're not shallow in our approach. And but when you're working in the business environment, often your touch is quite light, and it's not as it's not as deep as what my own self would normally be. So yeah, there's lots of times that I struggle with it. Lots of times that I mean, again, most of my vehicles are got sign written up, so they'll have logos or details or whatever. And sometimes, like anybody, you want to road rage, or you want to put your foot down, scream at them, especially when you've got a nice car. But you can't, because people watch you, people see what you're doing, and whatever approach and whatever behavior you exhibit, they put that to other businesses. So you've always got to be above. Yeah. So you're always watching yourself, and and it comes through in every fiber of your business and who you are. So it's a constant thing.
Because you're always thinking you have that constant reputation that you're holding. It's kind of what you're going with.
It is, but also, so it's like, okay. So let's put it this way, right? We're all in So pandemic, right? Everyone was complaining about wearing a mask, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now it doesn't do this, now it doesn't do that. The way I saw it, as I do everything I do with business, it's a layer, and it's when you build up these layers, your approach to what you're doing, is much more thorough. So, you wear a mask, you're more likely to think about washing your hands. You're more likely to be careful when you interact with people. And it's the same. It's the same with the layers for business.
Mm-hmm.
Once you start to remove those layers, things start to fall apart, and you're less likely to approach things in the way that you really should. So, yeah, I mean that's why you've always been watching everything you do. Everything's got a system to it. Everything's got a pattern. No matter what you do, when you put your shoes on in the morning, there's a learned pattern, and it's the same approach to business for me.
It's pretty interesting extra level thought at constant times. So did you have any mentors or role models kind of getting into it or growing up, or even maybe now, as far as entrepreneurship? Or maybe even personally, it doesn't have to be specifically that.
Well, I mean, I think for me, for me, it was very personal. I didn't want to be like them lot, like the black sheep in the family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I wanted to be above board. I wanted to give the best I could possibly do. So the way I look at I look at the person I am, or people within business, or people within any kind of trade or whatever, is you start off at the rock face with a chisel and a hammer, carving chunks of rock. You put them in your bucket, and you go over to the scaffold, and you attach it, and the guy at the top winches it up, carves out a gargoyle, and sticks it on that cathedral. The way my approach is I want to be this guy at the top. I want to know everything about what I do. Okay. I want to know. I mean, and so I've never really had any specific, people I look up to in business, because again, where I'm from, we learn to cut through all the nonsense. We don't deal with fluff, all this shiny kind of affirmation post kind of fluff.
Okay.
It's more, this is what needs doing. This is best approach. This is how we do it. Now get on and get it done. And so, for me, it's always been about looking at what's being done and trying to do it better, and so, yeah, I don't really have, I've always been a big reader. But honestly, as far as people, I've never really, my admiration has always come from scientists or composers and things like that, really, rather than people who are doing it for themselves. Because again, a lot of it is almost mystified, and trying to attain to the glorification of this person, is often detrimental to what you're doing, because you're almost worried that you're never going to get to that point. You're the struggle that you hit is almost a negative on your own person.
Okay.
You understand?
Yeah. That's an interesting way. Yeah.
I mean, for me, it's always been a fight with myself. I used to run a lot, as well as train the gym, and it was never about the speed. It was always about just picking a place and getting there. Whether it be 20 miles, 50 miles, or whatever. Okay. And so it's always been, for me personally, a struggle with myself. Like I say, I've always had that direction that I wanted to go, but never knew the actual end point. And I still don't. I don't want to. So yeah, I mean, it's for me. It's always been a fight with myself, honestly, rather than anybody else.
Mm-hmm. So you kind of just basically motivation factors is getting better every day and every year. Kind of finding, like what you said, is trying to find something and then be better than that. So so it's not really such as like role models, but more of motivational ledges that you're just not trying to meet, but you're trying to get past those ledges.
Yeah. I mean, I feel that, you know, if you're not learning something every day, then you're wasting that day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's not about, you know, we worry about getting older. You know, whereas, I mean, for me, it's okay to get older. You just don't get old. And the reason where you get old is by just letting yourself flounder. If you're getting better every day at something, even if it's just, you know, learning a new word or whatever it might be, you know, you're always achieving. You're always making things better. And, you know, my motivation just comes from wanting to move forward, always taking that next step. And if you're not reaching beyond the end of your grasp, then I think you're wasting your life. You know, I think if you're not trying to do better, to be better, you know, then I think you're not looking deep enough, and you're not trying hard enough. And I couldn't pinpoint exactly where that comes from for me. You know, I just know that is where I stand. Yeah.
Yeah, it's constant growing, and then once you stop growing, you kind of stop living. Is kind of what you're kind of going.
You're going to be dead. Yeah. I mean, I don't ever want to retire. You know, I see that again. Back to running. You know, you're quite able to run 60 miles. But if you get on a 10-mile run, by the time you get to 9.5 miles, then you start feeling it, you know. But if that was a 20-mile run, you wouldn't feel that 9.5 miles. It's the same with that retirement age, or that idea of pulling back and not having to push anymore. You start to just lose. I mean, people say, "Oh, I want to retire when I'm 35 or when I'm 40." And I have friends who really genuinely do, but I say, well, what are you going to do? What is your purpose? Oh, I've got loads of stuff to do. I'll potter around the garden. I can't imagine anything worse. I cannot imagine, without having a reason to really push, to drive, to stretch my legs every day. I just can't. It would be depressing.
Yeah, that mile run was a pretty good analogy. Yeah. Kind of like when you're retiring and you said you have stuff to do, but it's almost like a checklist. Once you do that stuff, then you're done. And it's like, what do you do now?
Exactly. I mean, you know, what we do in business enables us to do what we really want to do. You know, I mean, some people, you know, I guess want to retire, but how much is that just societal conditioning? You know, it's like getting married, having kids. You know, how much of that's really just societal conditioning? And when you really look inside yourself and ask yourself what you want to do, you know, I mean, is sitting there dithering, retiring, you know, putting your teeth in a glass, is that really what you want to do? I don't think so, you know. And I think also, you know, I guess it brings us to that age, you know, ceiling that we all feel at a certain point. We're all working towards, or the majority of us are working towards. You know, I genuinely think, you know, we waste our age when we get to a point. They say that youth is wasted on the young, but I think, you know, I think that age is wasted on the old. I think that the ability to conversate and to what they call thin slice, which comes with, you know, we talk about we talk about how people are wise, right? So we talk about what people who are wise, and wisdom brings with it what they call thin slicing. And thin slice is the ability to look at something and, without really having to internalize it, hit the nail on the head for what it is. When it's like, for instance, like when you walk into a room, we're walking into a room with family in there, and they've just been arguing, calling each other a bunch of arseholes.
Yeah.
When you walk in there and they're quiet, you can pick it up straight away. Something's wrong. That's thin slicing.
Okay.
And that comes with experience, and it could be in anything. It could be automotive. It could be, being an art historian, or whatever it is. You can just see it, and that's what comes with age. And I think to waste that and let it wither and die is a tragedy, And so when it comes to business or art or whatever it might be, I think we should be encouraging people to be more active, in all walks of life when they get older, as opposed to seeing them as useless or someone we just put away.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, I can't. It's not that I can't wait to get old, But yeah, I mean, I'm not willing to give up and die.
Mm-hmm. Not gonna waste your last few years doing nothing.
Well, yeah, I'm going to waste my last few years doing everything.
So have you had some sort of support system or reinforcements? I mean, common ones would be like family and friends, but it doesn't have to be. It could be like you said, reading or.
Yeah, I mean, I've for a long time now, I've always had. When I'm just looking around the room, I just in this room alone, I must have like 8 books on the go. I do a lot of writing. I get a lot of my thoughts out. I write some blogs. I've got a book which I'm writing. Sorry, and it's good to get things out or bring things in. It sparks the mind. It's the same reason that I spoke to the lady yesterday in Athens. It's often inspiration comes from the most unexpected places. And so I as far as support, I guess emotional support is what most of us need. Running a business is very, very lonely, even at the best of times. You have people who, such as partners or family or friends, who you can talk to, but they a lot of the time, unless they actually run their own business or understand the pressures, sometimes it's difficult to see the depth, and understand the things that you're not saying, because so I think for me, it's important to be able to at least listen to other business owners, to understand what they're going through, even if I'm not able to open up myself. I do encourage, like my connections on LinkedIn, for instance, to, if they ever need an ear or they ever need anybody to talk to speak to me. And I've always been that person who asks the difficult questions, and you don't always get the answer you want or the answer that they want to give you, but often that comes again from societal pressures. We're all under pressure to almost be a certain way in business, almost be indestructible. But I heard an interesting quote, and it says, vulnerability is a strength of opportunity, right? Which means that we expect ourselves and other people to be absolutely perfect at everything they do, and not show any kind of pressure-related stress or anything like that. And I think, for me, I would prefer when, to be able to offer an ear to people. And so, yeah, it's, if I could, offer any advice to anybody, it would be that you show vulnerability, that you allow those within your immediate contacts, such as friends and family, to, obviously not be crying on each of the shoulders. That's too vulnerable. I mean, that's just wet. But to actually, share certain keywords, because there's been points in my career where, I've been walking the dogs, and all I want to do is just sit on the ground and not move. Put my head in my hands and just give up. But what we tend to do as business owners is we push through it. We keep driving. We lose sleep. We just, like I said, just keep on marching and don't allow ourselves to be vulnerable. Don't allow ourselves to open up. Because it's not a weakness to be vulnerable. I mean, in many ways, it's a strength because it's a way to cope. It's a way to open up. It's a way to allow other opinions and other directions, and to almost make the choice of redirecting. But it's hard. Because again, societal pressures that we're under as far as business owners. I mean, if you look at most of the social media, but let's take LinkedIn for instance. A lot of it is driven towards absolute, perfection, absolute. It is, and like I said, when I say it's absolute, unless you are perfect, then you're terrible. Unless you are able to give everything to everybody and then go above and beyond, you're terrible. And I think those sorts of pressures, those sorts of, we've looked back over the past 10, 20 years at how, with the rise of social media, started the uptick in things like anorexia and whatnot in girls, and it's the same impact that you have with business. We see all this burnout and all these people who are just fading with it, and it's because of the unprecedented drive to what most people see as perfection, and again, perfection is only attained now, not by being perfect, but being more than, I mean, you can't keep going above and beyond, because where do you get to? Where is that? How much do you give? It's just impossible. And then, that leads on to customer expectations. You expect everything and more. So you expect more than, so if you went to Apple and bought an iPhone and they give you two, right? Now the next person who comes in and wants two, and then what happens in 2 years? They give you three for the price of one. And how does that work? Right. And that's the same with business, and business of all sizes. So, I'm gone off on a tangent, haven't I? So I don't even know where I am now.
So from what I'm kind of gathering, the vulnerability is an opportunity. Is if you don't get that help, you kind of, if it's a weakness or something that's bringing you down, but you're hiding it, that weakness is always going to be there, and you're not going to be your full potential or reach more potential. And then, but you open it up and have others help you with that vulnerability. You improve that weaker side of you, and then overall through opening up, being vulnerable, that build that opportunity. Now that maybe area is not as vulnerable. Now you're better, your potential is better. Is that kind of where you were going with that?
Absolutely, yeah, 100%. If it's we all need help. We're not all perfect at everything.
Mm-hmm.
We pretend we are, but we're not. We all need advice. We all need or could benefit from advice. We could all benefit from being shown a different way. I mean, we could all be painting on caves still.
Mm-hmm.
But I use a remarkable. It's a damn sight better. But we could, but we could all be still painting on caves. It's about being shown a new way, a new direction. About being able to open up your mind a little bit, and also when it comes to having a true vulnerability, if in your mind, it may be very difficult to overcome, but somebody else has already been through it, who knows, what they're doing, or can show you a different way. That can be what was crippling can now be overcome instantly, or very, very quickly, and you can get on with whatever else you're doing. So yeah, that's kind of what I was talking about. Yeah.
So we'll do a little shift here. Kind of tell us what hindsight rated is and the influence and motivation behind it.
Okay. Well, hindsight rated is what we would call a customer accountability platform. So if you think Uber and Airbnb, as well as many companies who are able to not only pick and choose their customers and to target their customers for their own purposes, i.e., the customers that are more suited to their practice, but they're also able to rate within internally. So if you look at Uber, you can rate the drivers, but the drivers can also rate you, and that is an internal platform where if you have bad interactions and a lower rating, then you may not get picked up. But the good customers are more likely to have a better time. You get better cars, better drivers, better rates, whatever it is. Hindsight rated is that, but magnified, and it's for everybody. So if you think you take that platform and you open it up to every business. So for instance, let's say if I take a phone call from a customer, let's say I'm an electrical contractor, take a phone call from a customer never dealt with before. I can put the address into hindsight rated, and it'll come up pretty rapidly within seconds with what we call a quick review background check, and it'll come up with just a simple 5-star rating. Now, if I click on them and they're already been in the system, I can read any reviews that they have from other businesses. So I can see what they're like to deal with, if they pay promptly, if they're respectful, plus I can actually read reviews. So I have a better idea of who these people are. I have a better idea whether or not they fit within the kind of the customer framework that my business works with. The people that we generally want to work with. So reframe this. The biggest thing for small businesses, any business these days, is late and non-payment. The stress is on. We also talk about cash flow.
Mm-hmm.
Stresses upon business is enormous, and it doesn't just stop at the accounts department or the business owner or whoever it is. It goes all the way through. It recedes all the way through the business. So we talk about how business owners and managers should give all of our time to our employees and colleagues. How we should motivate and respect and conversate and all of these sorts of things. Well, that gets taken away with the enormous stresses of dealing with customers who are less than adequate, who don't complete the transition or the transaction, should I say, as it should be. And this is becoming more and more and more. So, so for instance, like if you as a contractor or any other customer facing business, don't get paid, for instance, the legal options that are open to you are negligible, and very, very time consuming and extremely cost prohibitive, right? So they just don't work. So most companies, what they do, they just write off a debt. So, when it comes to non-payments, just write it off. And there's several reasons. One, because of what I've just explained, by the legal side, but also two, because again, in society, the business society, the society we're in, to chase a customer, to put pressure on them to pay, is a negative on our end. So even though we're the ones who are not being paid, for us to put pressure on the customer, we could either be fired off by that customer and not do any more work for them, and receive a negative review. Mm-hmm. So it's seen as a bad thing to push for that customer, And so what hindsight rated does is allows you to see any negative history for that customer. But at the same time, if we take that negativity out, put it over there, you get a good customer. What can you do? You can be more open with that customer as opposed to always blanketing everybody with that negative approach. Mm-hmm. So when that they're good to deal with, they pay well, they're educating themselves in the process, they're respectful, then you can approach them in a much open manner and give them the service that you set out to give in the first place. Whereas without bringing a certain accountability to a customer, they run rampant, because again, I'm a customer, you're a customer. We've all been that customer, and I think what it is because we don't seem to have to think about our approach. If we're in a bad mood, we'll be snotty, but it shouldn't be like that. And it's all because we're waving some money at the business. So what hindsight rated does, it allows you to, first of all, decide whether you want to work with that customer. Then it allows you to invoice, quote, create a searchable transaction history with that customer. And then, if you have any issues with payment, for instance, we allow you, legal documentation templates to be auto-filled with customer details and send them to the customer. But also at the end of it, we allow you to follow up with your customer, because that's another thing. How do we follow up with customers? Often it can be difficult. Do you give them a flimsy postcard with your rating details on it? Do you send them a random text message? I mean, even with a lot of CRMs, the follow-up is almost like a secondary, and it's impersonal. Whereas what hindsight does is it allows you to send a bespoke custom email to the customer, telling them how much you love them or how much you don't like them. And at the bottom, you have your ability to put your social and direct rating links. Google, Google. I can't think. Yeah, so Google, Yelp, Facebook, and Instagram, and they can follow and like you back, or send you a directly rate you back. But what it does is it creates more of a customer base, a genuine customer base, because that follow up is bespoke to that customer, mm-hmm. and it keeps you in the mind. And so, what is very difficult at the moment in today's age is that customer loyalty. Is keeping that customer, because often it's who's cheapest, rather than who's the best.
Right.
Often who's cheapest. And so, this is what hindsight does. It gives you the whole range from start to finish with the customer. And that's what we do. What really got me started with hindsight is just as I say, we had as an electrical contractor, we had some amazing customers. We have one customer who would take our guys up in his aeroplane. He lives on a runway, and if they get there in the morning, he'd take them on a flight and then actually teach them how to fly his aeroplane. Just incredible guy, and we would always say, well, how long were you up in that plane? We can't charge you for that, and he'd insist on paying us for the time. But then you get the absolute to the side of the spectrum, which is you have people stalking our employees. You have people who are mentally manipulating our employees. Often we don't tell the people who starting with the company that they have to simply put up with the negative impacts of customer relations, but they're just expected to, and that's the enormous pressure on an employee. It's something that we don't talk about. We're not supposed to mention, in polite business society, that yes, the customer can be an enormous drain and an issue on the business. And so we were to wrap this up a little bit. We were on a regular basis. We would lose at least $2,000 a week through non-payment of invoices. Late payment was astronomical, and it was always all sorts of excuses. So the worst month we had was like $96,000 that we lost through non-payment. And again, people say, well, if you had a contract, which we did, or if you followed up with a lien, the problem is this. Again, the lien. If we raise a lien for every customer that was late or didn't pay, then we may as well just become lawyers, because it's and also this second thing with the lien process. If you're second in line, for instance, in fact, let's start with this. If you're first in line, you put a lien on a property, whether it be residential or commercial. Generally what they do is they wait 12 months, because most lien people, or lieners who put liens on, they can't afford the time, never mind the expense of a lawyer to keep that lien up. So it drops off after 12 months if nothing's done with it. Okay. It goes away. Now, if you're second in line, you have to wait until that first one drops off. And if it doesn't, if it continues, then you have to wait until it's been completed, and then you can start your process. So if you're second in line, it's impossible. You're blowing money, and you can only claim back the original invoice and what you spent with a lawyer. You can't claim back your time and expenses. And so this is why it's just prohibitive, and just it's so difficult, And also, most places you only have about 45 days to raise a lien, and again, that's in business terms impossible. So that's how Hindsight came about. It's about helping business and small businesses, micro and small businesses, to deal with the unspoken truth that not all customers are fantastic, and these days many don't pay. And so it's about dealing with that. It's about bringing accountability to the side of the customer. It's about changing the underlying values of how we see business. Because essentially, if we just talk about micro and small businesses, the micro and small business in this country, in every country in the world, is what makes up the fabric of our society. They employ our friends, our neighbours, our family, ourselves, and they use the goods and services of other small businesses in our society, in our town, in our local vicinity. And so they are integral to the fabric of what we call America and our states. And so, but again, just the one issue of non-payment, for instance, is choking industry, is choking our entrepreneurs. It's choking people. And so, you just on a regular basis, I speak to people who just don't pay themselves, who haven't paid themselves for 6 months. They're owed a lot of money, and they work every day, but
Mhm.
they simply don't pay themselves because they don't know if they can afford to.
Right.
And that's why hindsight exists.
So you're providing a value to the small businesses, while you're also providing an opportunity for the customers or whatever to build their own good rep, and then probably ultimately lead to them getting more businesses and partnerships and stuff like that, because they were able to perform, get good ratings, and then more of those small businesses that you're targeting will go to them.
Precisely, yeah. I mean, so let's just say commercial customers, for instance. General contractors have a very difficult time, certainly more recently, of attracting quality subcontractors. And part of the reason is that, yes, you can look up a review for a GC, but it all comes from a customer. It doesn't come from a small business subcontractor. And often you get treated very poorly as a subcontractor by a general contractor. You just do.
Mm-hmm.
I could spend, we could make a 4-hour video just on, stories and tactics of the average GC. I'm not saying everyone's bad, but as a subcontractor, even though you're the one generally who's bankrolling the job, you get treated poorly. You're the one with all the skill set, the knowledge, the background, the ability, but yet you're the one who's being mistreated. You're the one who's not being paid. You're the one who's being put on the back burner, having to wait, messed around. And so, yeah, that's exactly it. If I, as a subcontractor, knew that a business that I was working with, that I was going to work for, had a good rep, had a good name, then absolutely, I'd be vying for their work.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas what happens, let's say, as a subcontractor to a GC, for instance, you'll receive an email one day requesting bid. You'll open the bid up. You might spend 3 weeks sourcing all the information, putting it together, sending it off. You hear nothing. And if you do, it's because you're the cheapest. It's not because you're the best.
Mm-hmm.
It's just because you're the cheapest. Often they don't know anything about you. So, and then it goes on like that. And it's very, 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 very difficult to be able to do background checks on customers. For instance, but what we forget is it's been going on for many, many years. Like if you fill up with gas, you're being rated. Use your credit card to buy clothes, you're being rated. You go into a bank, they're rating you.
Mm-hmm.
You go to a restaurant, they're rating you. You Google's phoning you in on your phone, rating you.
Mm-hmm.
You're constantly being tracked and rated. But when it really comes down to important factors, we shy away from them when it comes to the most vulnerable. And the most vulnerable are the small business. And I class small businesses as the 0 employees to 20 to 30. They're true small businesses. They're the ones who have very little input from elsewhere as far as investment. They're the ones who have very little input as far as anywhere to turn, legal input, legal ability. And so they're the true, they're the ones who push new boundaries. They're the ones who push investment. They're the ones who employ the most people. They're the ones who give the most back to the community. They're the ones who are integral. This is the fiber that I was talking about, and these are the people who genuinely I really care about, even though I don't know them, I feel the pain. I know exactly where they are, because I've been there so many times. And, these are the people I genuinely want to help. I mean, so for instance, on my LinkedIn profile, Gavin Hesketh on LinkedIn, I'm offering anybody with a small business, 12 months free for hindsight. Come and use it. And at the same time, I will do a video conference with you, a meeting with you, and I'll walk you through exactly how to set it up and how to get the best from it, free, and it's truly well, first of all, selfishly, I want to meet people, make new contacts, but really, I just want to help give something back, without trying to sell something, push something, without fishing for anything else. I just want to help people,
It kind of goes into the next question. So what was the targeted, your target audience? So obviously the small business, what has their response been like to this?
So it's been mixed, honestly. I mean, the idea of the customer, right? So the idea of the customer is almost like a deity, in fact, I was just writing a blog before this meeting, and I was saying that a customer expects the undying loyalty of what's normally written in ancient texts or carved into mountains. They expect the treatment to be so exceptional for no more than asking details about what you offer. I mean, we spend decades building what we have, sacrificing, investing, and whatever, educating ourselves, educating others, and then it comes to it, and then, like I say, the customer it just expects everything, and it's that idea that is detrimental to what we do, and so I think I feel that needs to change. That idea of the customer being untouchable, to the detriment of our business. Again, imagine you spend 20 years, 10 years. So you educate yourself. That could be 5 years. You work with somebody else. You do exams. You do all these sorts of things. You get to a point where you're a master of your trade. You invest in vehicles. You invest in employees. So you build this two-decade thing, and then some random customer comes and just puppets your business. All for $100, $500, $1,000. And because they're in a bad mood, either don't pay you or they give you a crappy review.
Right.
And it's because there's no accountability, just because they're able to, we've put them in that box, and so
That's pretty cool. So it's been pretty mixed. Has it been what has been the hardest to connect with them on?
Okay, so I would say, so again, I was off on a tangent then. What I would say is that the hardest bit is to allow people the understanding that the customer isn't always right, and so we when in our approach, because our approach is familiar, with how we do it, but it's the application is unfamiliar. It's sometimes difficult to wrap people's head. So everyone's used to rating a business, but no one's used to rating customers because it's not usually spoken about. Like I say, rating is generally done in the background, and that's how large companies, you collate all this information, it's sold to these large companies, and that's how they target you. Whereas what we're doing is bringing it down to grassroots, opening it up to everybody. And so for the average normal person who's generally got no way of doing any kind of background check or research for customers, it's difficult to understand, and that's what it is. But the thing is, with hindsight, it's so simple. It's complicated in the background, but on the forefront, on this, it's incredibly simple, and it's easy to use. And so our customers sometimes, or people we're putting to, sometimes get lost and don't fully understand that because it's just so unusual. And so that's where our approach sometimes gets lost. But on the other side, when customers do understand how it's used and what they can do with it, it's been really good. You know, I mean, just for instance, just take the far end of it where they can follow up with customers. That approach for many people has been groundbreaking because they've gone from not being able to get any reviews at all to something that literally tickles the customer's balls. You know, it makes people smile when they know that the company thinks that you're a great customer. You know, then they almost jump to rate you back. You know, and because it's so easy, just touch the button. They're all over it. And so, you know, it's not like it obviously, as you can expect, it's not 100% of all customers rate them back, but it's like an uptick of like 60, 70, 80%. And so that in itself, and so, but it is, so for instance, you know, you talk to people, let's say you talk to people who, I talk to people who have done work for a company, but they're not being paid. You know, the check's late. They told them it was going to come in, check's late. And I say to them, well, you know, if you should review them on hindsight. And, you know, hindsight rated. And they're like, oh, I can't do it. I say, okay, that's fine. You know, and then it's another week and then another month. I said, you know, when are you going to allow, you know, yourself to rate them back? When is this? And also then you get to a point where you can't communicate because you feel like you're pushing them too much. What happens is you send them a review through hindsight, and it's not a 5-star review; it's a 1-star review or a 2-star review. You know, and then what it does then is it opens up that communication. And that's when the customer goes, wait a minute. Because when their customer sees it, they're like, well, wait a minute, why have I got a 1-star review? And then they call them because it's got all your details in there. So then our customer, which we call the end user, kind of opens up and goes, oh my God, now I understand. It's not about bashing. It's not about skipping over the terrible customers. It's about bringing balance. You know, and once customers our end users realize that there's that balance, you know, it opens them up to new directions, new possibilities. And so it's often the how do I use it? How do I get over that mindset? And that's where it's been difficult. How to get over that mindset of the customer's untouchable. You know, but there's often people who use it, like, so for instance, gig workers, you know, these people who sit up your door with food, you know, they use it all the time. And, you know, and I've had some really good feedback because I think they're used to technology. They're always on the phone, whatever, you know, they deal with a lot of customers. So their feedback's great. And so, you know, I think it depends on the size of the business that people usually deal with, you know, and how lofty the ideals are as far as, you know, are they corporate or are they dealing with you know, smaller businesses, people who are more communicative? Because again, the people who deal with the bigger companies are more ready to give excuses for those big companies, you know. Like it seems sometimes that the bigger companies, you know, are less able to pay on time or less able to dedicate time. But you'd expect it to be the other way around. And people, you know, so it's mixed. Yeah, it's definitely mixed. I mean, I think it's becoming easier to relate. I used to be quite soft in my approach, you know, but then I just said to people, look, you know, if how many people don't pay you? You know, they say, well, 70% are late. And it is easily 70%. 70% are late. Okay, hindsight rates will deal with that. You know, this is it is a slow burner because again, it's about changing underlying values. It's about about letting your customers know that they are going to be rated back, that there is accountability, that you can't just throw your coffee back at a teenager and get away with it.
Yeah.
Do you understand?
Yeah.
So, it's again, that's the main issue. The main hurdle is changing our viewpoint upon of the customer.
Mm-hmm. Applying, I can't think of the word, but basically, making sure they hold up their end of the bargain rather than always just saying the customer's always right.
Precisely. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you look back from where you started with this, and then to where you are now, what have you learned, and then how is that going to impact of where you see it going in the future?
Okay. I mean, there's, as far as hindsight rated, I think I've learned quite a lot. I mean, it was a dramatic career change for me, and I think one of the things is it's okay to reach out beyond the geography for companies that you work with. So we interviewed all around the world for app developers. We landed on a company in Brazil called Liven, Liven, a Brazilian company. And when we started, like the day that we were supposed to start, they were already 2 weeks into development. They outstripped every company in terms of everything they did, communication and ability, in everything that I've dealt with in the past 10 years, or certainly since moving to the States. Outstripped everybody. Exceptional company. So that's one thing. It's okay not to use the people in your vicinity. I would say also I've learned to be more steadfast, more assured with companies as well that I deal with. I mentioned fake it until you make it. There's an awful lot of those. Mm-hmm. So, if I was to start hindsight rated again, then I think I would have been more short and not give people the opportunities that I had. But I think also, as far as my end user, the targeted approach, I think I would be, again, just more straightforward, more honest, more myself, because at the end of the day, I think the business owners are just like that internally. We have to be quite straightforward, mm-hmm. Open-minded, able to see where we're at and what, and the issues that we face. Mm-hmm. But again, it's I put a lot of the, I'm going to use the word ignorance, self-imposed ignorance that we have down to societal approaches and the way that we are supposed to face what we have to deal with. So I would be more straightforward, and which is the direction we're going now, I think. And I would. I think that's pretty much all the changes that I would have made. I mean, I think the journey is part of. In fact, it's the biggest part of what we do. It's about making. It's about looking back on those mistakes, mm-hmm. or the things that we should have learned sooner, or the connections that we've made, the directions that have been altered through those connections and conversations with those connections. I think all of it. It's what makes what we do and who we are much richer. It's not about being. You can't be perfect all the time. You can't make all the right decisions. You can't. You're always going to spend more, and it's not about spending more on the things that get done that you have to worry about. It's about spending money on the things that don't get done. I mean, if I can be a bit crude for a moment,
sure.
Our first website was made by a 18-year-old sat on a sex swing in a bedroom, charged me by the thousandth of the minute. And although we didn't employ her directly, that's the person I had to deal with. And although I knew that it wasn't, it was just awful, and when it came to it, it was such a convoluted mess that we had to accept this plate full of mush of a website that we did, because we had no other choice. It just took so bloody long. So yeah, I mean, there are things like that which you have to accept, and and like I say, you learn, you get over, and you run with it. But I like the direction that we've gone in with hindsight. Again, we are self-funded. There's no, there's no outside funding at all. So sometimes it can be a bit of a struggle. There's always a drive to make sure that we're doing what we can within budget, and there's always a drive to communicate fully with everybody we deal with. But no, I think I've done this enough times to understand that you have to accept the judgment that you made, because again, when you look back on something, you forget your outside influences, you forget the pressures that were put on you at the time to have to make that decision. And so, no, I genuinely don't think I would have done anything different.
Yeah, like you said, it's about the journey and the struggles and the kind of like in life in general, the struggles and the mistakes that you kind of eventually overcome, become triumphant, and then almost gives it the meaning. You look back and kind of like, we got through that or learned from that, and then now you're even better from it.
Absolutely, yeah. I think so. Yeah, well, again, these are the things that make you the person you are. These are the things that allow you to thin slice, to become wise. To understand what you do and who you are. And yeah, I mean, I don't think you can ever know too much about the things that you do. You can never understand fully, and never be the best at what you do. Because if you are, you become bored, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I guess if I was going to say there'd be one thing that I might do is lower my expectations as far as time frame, because with hindsight rated, for instance, could be the software and a mobile application at that, there is a tendency to get slightly lost in the sea of other software and other applications, other solutions. And so you have to overcome that and remember that the majority are crap. The majority are just fluff. The majority of what you're seeing as your competition, they haven't got longevity. They haven't got the ability to maintain or to attract or to please the end users, and so yeah, you just have to overcome that. And I think that would be my thing that I would tell myself if I could go back 2 years. Just expect it to take a little longer than you think,
Okay. So as you were saying, you like meeting as many people, especially the small businesses and micro businesses. Sort of, you could say, building like a community.
Well, absolutely, yeah. I mean, 100%. I mean, we consider hindsight rated and the people within it to be a community, because we're able to use our experiences to benefit ourselves. But as far as myself, absolutely. I think I think we seem to miss out on the fact that LinkedIn is and the business community within it and externally, could benefit enormously from each other just through, passing on information, just passing on knowledge. Because again, knowledge. What's the use of knowledge if you can't pass it on? I think for me, being able to meet small businesses, micro businesses, people in general who are, within that kind of business structure, are fascinating, because everyone's got a different story, everyone's got a different issue, everyone's got a different approach, and I think we could make things a whole lot better if we were just able to actually connect, as opposed to accepting somebody's connection and then immediately trying to sell them some crap or a service or whatever. Actually find out who they were, because again, your best sales force are the people who trust you. Those connections who know you and trust your values, and then your product and service. It's not just about blindly throwing out this net and dragging people in. It's more than that. If you have 100 connections and they have 100 connections, it goes like that, doesn't it? So, but if you just have 100 connections and immediately trying to sell something to them without them knowing who you are, what you do, the integrity of the business, and the standards that it holds, it doesn't go anywhere. So yeah, I think, for me, connections are multi-layered, multifaceted, and I'm happy and willing to meet any business owner, like I say, and it's part of why, like I say, I'm for now anyway, allowing hindsight, 12 months of hindsight rated for nothing. Like I say, it's one, to help, but it's two, selfishly, to actually get to be able to meet people, see what they do, how they do it, and on the back end, hopefully, learn from these people. As well as, hopefully, like I say, as well as help. Maybe they can learn something from me. I don't know, but like I say, more likely I can learn from them, and that's what it's about.
So what would you say is the key or that's to starting and then ultimately connecting with a community?
Well, I think you have to have an idea of what you stand for, and what you don't stand for. You have to be honest, and again, I tend to cut out all of the fluff. I don't deal with bullshitters, and I don't bullshit myself. There's no point in lying to yourself. So when it comes to the beginning, you've got to understand who you are and what you stand for, and then try and connect with similar people. So whether if you're in business, your business really should directly relate to who you are and what you do, and the standards within that, of what you want to attain in business. So and then it's about finding people who are similar, and it's not just about blindly, again, running through people searching for a type of business, but it's about actually looking at who they are, what the background is, the posts, and actually doing some. And it does take time, but once you find genuine people who are genuinely interested in connecting, and who are willing to talk face to face and communicate, then it's about connecting with those people, and then they're more likely on that back end to have done the same, to be connected with those kinds of people as well. So it branches out, and it does take time, but for every 10 good connections you have, they may have 10 good connections, and it spans off from there. So again, it starts off with knowing who you are and what you stand for, because there's no point in talking to connections you have nothing in common with, or who stand for something you just simply don't believe in.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because it doesn't do you any good, all that connection. So, but like for instance, every Saturday morning, I spend 2 or 3 hours on LinkedIn looking at individuals in different areas of the country, in different states, in different walks of life. Just really trying to find out who people are, and then I connect with them. So yeah, I mean, I spent 3 hours this morning, looking at profiles and really diving into who people are.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just, it's not just about gaining connections. It's also quite interesting,
Mm-hmm.
and it just takes time. You've got to dedicate the time to it. And what I do generally, once someone's accepted a connection, I'll send them a message, thanking them, offering them, if they ever need to speak to anybody, reach out, talk to a stranger about something or what they do, then they can. And that's how I got speaking to the lady yesterday. So, we were talking for a couple of hours, and it was fascinating. I left that meeting a better person than I went into it. So, it does take time. It
Mm-hmm.
takes a level of commitment, and it takes, like I say, first of all, understanding what you want and who you are. So, yeah, and you can make mistakes. You can obviously make mistakes, and you can end up talking to somebody who you have nothing in common with. One thing I would say is, especially with LinkedIn, you have to be careful of, you make a connection, and then, you want to, you want a conversation, for instance, and it'll be somebody else when you get on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
When you get on the video, it's somebody else. It's them and a salesperson, or they simply aren't the person that they portray on LinkedIn. And so you do have things like that, but again, it's about time, it's about patience, and I guess it's a little bit about endurance.
And so one of the key things I got from that was ensuring or continuing the mutual benefit for you and the community, not just you building the community for them. It's like you have to also be still interested in partaking in that community as well. You're for yourself, not
Absolutely.
even selfishly, but it's just part of being the community.
Yes, well, the community should benefit everybody. I think for me, everybody should give a little in order to receive a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you have 10 people in a community and you give a little bit, those 10 people all receive what you've just given, and often are willing to give back. So you always get more than what you put in.
Mm-hmm.
Always. So yeah, I think it's certainly about that. Yes, you have to benefit from it, but again, we are just animals, unless we receive something in reward,
Mm-hmm.
then we don't want to give anything, do we?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it does have to benefit everybody, and you have to be, you certainly have to realize if it isn't, because there's no point dedicating your time to it.
Mm-hmm. So this kind of goes with kind of, I guess, providing the accountability or creating accountability for the customers that you do with Hindsight. Would you say the emphasis in transparency in the community or the business world, it seems like it's more emphasized nowadays than even 5, 10, 15 years ago. Would you say that creates a benefit a benefit to the up and coming small businesses and stuff? Like, are people trying to start their own thing? Being able to be transparent more than maybe it was expected in the past?
I think the ability to be transparent is better received But whether or not that transparency is honest, is a different thing. I think the expectation, if we're talking about transparency business to business, it all depends on whether or not you are wanting to sell to that other business. I think there's more understanding, of transparency of issues such as burnout, as issues as far as material handling and things like that at the moment. But I don't think there's an understanding when it becomes a business to customer transaction. Even if that business is a business, you almost take the form of a customer, and that elevated level of understanding, you become a customer and you put into a box and you relinquish all responsibility. Part of that responsibility is the understanding, and so it happens. That's the thing. So I think, yes, we're able to be more transparent because it's seen in a better light. But I don't think it goes a long way with customers at all. And again, it's due to the lofty expectations that we present to customers. I mean, if you scroll through LinkedIn now, guarantee it'll say always go above and beyond, always do this, always do that. Customers expect this and always that. It's impossible to attain to, and that's why I choose to be more straightforward, and more understanding. I generally look at everything I do as an adult looking at a child's issue. When you take yourself out of it, when you raise yourself above it, you actually look at the details. Just like the transparency, it's brilliant. Yeah, I love it. It's fantastic. There's lots of help, but it only goes so far, and then it cuts off. So you have to be careful in today's world of being too transparent, because you start to lose credibility, and because there is a lack of understanding. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. So what would you say is the most common, I guess, mistake that you see in inspiring entrepreneurs or whoever today?
Not fully understanding what they do. Their own ability. So pushing something that they can't actually do. That's the main mistake. That, again, brings it back to the fake it till you make it thing. It's okay. It's all right being able to be a computer programmer, right? But if you're selling your service to a business and you can't communicate, the other day I heard this from a supplier. They're really good at what they're doing and they're working constantly. They just don't tell you about it or show you what they're doing, right? So what is the point? They may as well be sat there with a thumb up their ass. They're just they may as well be doing nothing. But yet they still expect to be paid. So they're working. They're not showing you what they're doing. You can't feel any difference from what they're doing. You can't see or feel any difference, but yet you're expected to pay for it. So is that a service or what? What is that? So that's what I mean. If you're not fully aware of what you're supposed to do, then what you're doing is useless. It's pointless, and you can't attain the levels that you want to. And that's what, isn't it? And and then you may be great at communication, right? But you're terrible at what you do. That's the other side of it. You don't have to be the absolute best at what you do. You just have to be good at what you do and be able to do what you sell, do what you say, and that's the issue. That's what I find. And it's not a generational thing, it's everybody. It's the majority of people when they offer something, ordinarily they're offering it at a stage where they're able to make money from it. Come back to the cathedral thing. If you're not the guy on the top of the scaffold with the gargoyles, then you shouldn't be working. You shouldn't be offering that service.
Mm-hmm.
If you're just carving stone, that's what service you should be selling. You understand?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, but people, when they're at the bottom carving the stone, they're selling the gargoyles, and that's the issue. Biggest issue that we have.
Okay.
Certainly.
All right. Kind of gone a little over the hour that we kind of planned for. So one of the themes of what I'm doing, the Grindstone Unlimited, is trying to get people who are passionate about what they're doing or what they want to do, their goals. And obviously entrepreneur is one of them, but it could be anything with, if it's being a singer, artist, or whatever is your passion, and you're like trying to grind it out to get to do that. So that's one of the themes is actually, that's the main thing. One of the themes is learning from being able, like sharing what we can learn with you. People learn from what you're saying. They can apply to themselves, kind of look themselves in the mirror if they need to, or just take tips. And I think definitely there's a lot to learn from. I've definitely taken away a lot from what you've said. But again, the main theme is getting a group or a community eventually of people full of just what they're just passionate and they want to like share their passion. And then, so I would like to just finish off with you giving your word of why, whether it's just entrepreneurship in general or your company, why do you drive to do it? Why is your passion, and why are you grinding to, chase this thing that you're doing?
I believe that everybody has something to offer, and it doesn't always have to be a monetary trade-off. Sometimes it's just about making the world a better place. And if you're able to bring a smile to someone's face, be able to lift somebody up, be able to give back. We live in a world where very few people think about giving back. I think we've all got something to offer, and sometimes it might not seem like such a big deal, but I think if you're passionate about something, no matter what it is, you should go for it. You should really find a way of doing it. And, it doesn't have to just be one thing. It can be multiple. I think we decide to put what we actually really want to do, what we're actually passionate about, and what we love to one side, so that we can attain a loftier classification in society. I would say that you should. It's okay. So it's easier said than done to just do what you love.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're all under some kind of we all have expectations from outside, and we all have We're all under this pressure to, to earn money, to buy a car, to settle down, to get married, to have kids, to live the standard life. And you can do that from what you love, whatever it is, But it's the way that you present it, and you can be the greatest pencil artist in the world, but if you don't connect with people who can help you to show the world what you do, then it becomes something that ends up being a hobby,
Mm-hmm.
So you have to put an economic stance on what it is you do to be able to continue to do what you love. And so I'm not saying it always has to turn into a business, but there has to be some kind of economic value to someone, for what you do. And then that enables you to be able to be a ballerina or play the piano or whatever you want to do. But when we're children, we dream of what we actually truly want to do, and then we lose that joy, and we become brittle and nasty and driven by iPhones and the latest Toyota. But if you're not yet there, you need to stick with whatever you're doing. It might be difficult, but as long as you keep on putting one foot in front of the other, then whatever you do, if you love it, can turn into your purpose. You just have to reach out to people, reach out in multiple directions until something sticks. And that's the advice that I would give. Do what you care about and deal with the people that you care about, because essentially no one who ever really matters is ever going to say, oh my God, that bank account that they had was amazing. Did you see it? They're going to say, that Spencer, I was in the butcher's one day, and he paid for my eggs. I lost my money, or that little girl in that cancer ward, when you walked in and painted that picture of her, or played for her, or where the hell you do, whatever it is, it can mean so much to people. And we get lost, like I say, in this monetary trade-off and this want to look like or put out everything that we are into a monetary value. And I think the world's a shittier place for it. So doing what you love, and being true to yourself makes you a better person, makes you a happier person, and those around you happier. So, that's just the truth of it, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're driven in a direction, keep going in that direction. Simple as that. When you look at Tony Hawk's a skateboarder, he started off at, I don't know, 8, jumping over cars, whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
He's still boarding now. So, you're just going to do, because if you don't do what you love, you don't continue to do something you're really passionate about. How can you expect to reach such lofty heights? How can you expect to really influence other people, to do the same thing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think as far as a community, to be able to have a community that really saw value in doing what you actually love, I think that's an amazing community to be in. To actually be able to communicate and talk and be influenced by people who, even though may not do the same thing that we do, but you can see how much effort and energy and passion they put into something, that's only an amazing community to be in. So, yeah. But I would just say keep on stepping, keep on walking forward, keep on in that direction. And because often people ask, "Where do you want to be?" I don't bloody know. I haven't got a clue. Never even thought about it. This is the direction I want to go in. And if you keep going in that direction, but keep on monitoring how you feel about it, then you can always turn off. But if you have a place, if you pinpoint that place that you want to get to, you might hate it halfway through, but you still have to keep marching towards it. So, or else you're going to let yourself down and those around you. So anybody who's passionate about what they do should just stick to it. Do it. Forget everybody else. Put all your outside influences to one side and just do what you want to do.
Yeah. I think it's perfectly said. Well, thank you for taking the time to talk with me and answer all these questions. I know you have a busy schedule, so I do appreciate you taking the time.
Pleasure, Spencer. No problem, pal. It's good.
Yeah. Well, I guess have good rest of your day and weekend, and good luck in the future.
Yeah, you too. You too. It's been nice. Thanks, Spencer.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Take care.